That's when we were, this is kind of a spinoff of my talk from last year, and that's that picture's probably from 4 years ago when we were still growing rice. Next slide, Richard. That's a Mississippi State budget. Go to the next one, Richard. Well, go back. Stay right there. Yeah, that's showing $160 an acre loss growing Clearfield rice. So that's kind of the reason that we got off of it. Next slide. That's the yield we were making at about 140 bushels, and that's your returns at I think maybe the next slide shows the price. Yeah. So we were losing $70, $190, somewhere in that range. You know, just I think the Roundup was hurting us, Gramoxone was hurting us, several things were hurting us in our area. So we just decided to quit growing rice and go to more of a corn bean rotation than a rice and bean rotation. Next slide, Richard. Ooh, that's just another budget. Go ahead.
That's straight left field. The other one was contours.
That's some old rice bins, and that's another good reason to quit rice. You get to quit fooling with those old grain bins. Go to the next one. That's just a roller cone hipper that we were rowing up 12 row at that time and planting 8 row. Go to the next slide. And that's newer grain bins, a loop system that we put our corn in, corn and beans. And we still use the old bins too, but we don't have to use them. We have the option of using them. If we need to use them, we use them. If we don't need to use them, we don't use them. But we always use these. All right, next slide. And we're on 38-inch rows. We're 38-inch twin row. And we row up for our beans, we row up for our corn, and that's the reason we use the twin row planter on corns, because we need that planter to plant soybeans, and that's our row pattern for both crops. Go to the next slide. That's a corn budget. Corn budget shows a profit of $143 an acre for corn so that's a $300 difference over growing rice, making 150 as opposed to losing 150. That's the same thing. You can go to the next one. That's just another hipper. That's just a buster. And we also plow with that buster, and we row up with it. And go to the next. That's the same type buster right there, plowing corn. You can go to the next one, Richard. Same picture of that roller cone hipper. Same picture. That's the RTK guidance system. That's what makes the whole system work, I guess, is the guidance. Especially when we were 12 row rowing up, 8 row planting, but now that we're 12 row row up and 12 row plant, but you still need the guidance system for 12 row to make the 12 row work. Go to the next one, Richard. That's an older John Deere planter in the front that we used to plant. Really, we just planted beans with that. That's not a true twin row planter. That's just, that was a 19-inch planter that just slid together as close as they'll go. It gets about 14 inches apart. The Great Plains in the back is the planter that we plant corn with last year, planted corn and beans with. It's a 12 row stack fold with the one tank. And the Great Plains had just come out with it already had the dual lift assist wheels. That was our main concern for not ever going 12 row. We thought that we couldn't get through our fields with a 12 row planter. We thought that they'd be too heavy, and especially on the heavy clay soil, that we wouldn't be able to plant early when we wanted to, but it hadn't been a problem. Go to the next one, Richard. You can go to the next slide. It's the steerable wheels is a big deal on that planter too. When you back up on the ends to turn around, they don't gouge in the ground. They follow the front wheels of your tractor, so that's another advantage.
Can your tractor lift that whole thing?
Well, yeah, with the lift assist wheels, it will.
No, with the lift assist up.
With the lift assist wheels.
No.
And Great Plains makes a nice 12 row planter with hoppers, but I think they're bushel and a half hoppers, and you'd have 24 of them, and it'd take a long time to fill it up, and you wouldn't be able to plant very long with a bushel and a half, 3 bushels to each row. You'd be filling all the time, so we decided to go with the big tanks, and they hold 82 bushels, which is probably twice what the hoppers hold. So, and if you're worried about the weight, you don't have to fill it all the way up on wet days. That's the seed buggy that we fill the planter out of. You take that long spout off, then you just back up to the auger and fill your tank. And you fill your tank.
It's that last slide.
That's the last slide that Wayne put in. That's 8-row. That's a Mississippi State corn budget, 8-row versus 12-row. That's one that we kind of made, but right now they don't even show Mississippi State doesn't do an 8-row corn budget anymore. They do everything 12-row starting in 2016. But in 14 and 15 they only did 8-row budgets. So we were just comparing what Mississippi State said about the economics of it as far as the cost. That's cost to plant. That's the direct cost to plant.
Cost to plant.
$11 versus $10.
The fixed cost and the total cost to plant. And so going from 8-row to 12-row, the price actually went down, cost to plant. That's why we got that in red. You know, you think when you go to bigger equipment that it's gonna cost you more, but you know, the thing is, in their situation, okay, the tractors they have on farm are for tillage. So you've got high horsepower tractors. When you're using small equipment like their 8-row equipment, you're not using that tractor to get its capacity, but you have to have the tractor to be able to do your tillage work. So you've seen, you may be doing it yourself. You got a 300 horsepower tractor pulling a 50 horsepower bush hog or a ditcher, but you have the tractor. So if you have to go buy another tractor, you know, which is less expensive. So by going to 12-row, you're using the same tractor, but now you're using it more at its rated capacity. You didn't have to buy another tractor. So part of the cost of, you know, when the cost is going down, now this is the planter itself cost, planting cost. Doesn't include the tractor part of that, but you're not changing the tractor side of things. Now, you do see some increase in the last couple of years, but we thought that was just really interesting, that the cost not going up much.
Right. Same price basically to plant with a 12-row or an 8-row.
You said drift was an issue when you were growing rice, but I'm assuming drift hasn't really been an issue since you've gone to the bean and corn rotation?
Because corn's Roundup resistant.
Yeah, so you have the Roundup problem, yeah.
Right, I think so. And now they have research showing that we have a gramoxone problem too at desiccation time.
Yep.
When we spray all our beans at harvest with gramoxone and sodium chlorate, and they say that's getting a lot of our rice too. We were assuming that our rice was matured and wouldn't be affected by gramoxone, so we were letting it rip. But I think that's hurting the rice too. So some of this low yielding rice like we had was probably getting hit with Roundup and then getting hit again with gramoxone, and it was just more than it could take. But anyway, we just gave up on the rice and just went to corn and beans, just to simplify our operation mostly.
Chico, are y'all looking to shift to 12-row, or as, say, your 8-row equipment wears out and it's time to upgrade, or are you making the decision before it's worn out?
It's a gradual shift. Like as it's time to trade in planters, we were running 4 8-row planters. Last year we traded in 2. We traded in 2 Great Plains that had the big drill boxes on them, but they were 8-row. We traded those for 12-row, and we kept our John Deere 8-rows, the homemade ones where they're slid in together. And we still plant beans with those, and we have a single row 8-row that we plant corn with. But I mean, we wouldn't buy another 8-row as we trade those 8-rows. As those 8-rows get traded in, they'll get traded in for 12-rows.
Did 3 8-rows cost as much as 2 12-rows?
Well, we're going to trade. We'll go from 4 8-rows to 3 12 rows.
Yeah.
The 12 rows are more expensive. Yeah, you could probably buy 2 8 rows for what you could buy a 12 row for. The 8 rows are much cheaper, I would say, but it's worth the difference too, I would say.
One of the things we talked about, but one of the things that Chico and I talked about when putting this talk together is, you know, why consider 12 rows? Big thing, labor. Okay, yeah, does he have 2 tractors and 2 drivers for 8-row equipment? Probably not. You shift to 12 rows, you still need 1 tractor or 1 driver. Today's tractors are comfort driven. I have hearing aids because my audiologist told me that every farmer who ever grew up without a cab tractor has hearing problems at high pitches. I said, what? And I mean, but so creature comforts today, I guess that's a term I've used before. You know, you can put a driver in there. That driver's gonna be happier, less fatigued, RTK, less likely to make mistakes. You know, if you keep that driver instead of having 2 or 3 others. Okay, you've got 1 tender that can tender, say, 3 12 rows. He might not be able to tender that many 8 rows because you more of them filling up at a time. You back up, you can hit all of the 12 hoppers almost, or at least half of them with 1 backup. So, you know, that, you know, as labor issues get to be worse, you know, how many 2-row cotton pickers are left? How many 4-row cotton pickers are left? I mean, and what is the issue? You know, they're building modules on the go because we don't have the labor. We don't have the labor we can afford anymore.
You're doing it a third quicker too.
Well, you can get that 12-row speed planter now that'll go, you know.
Don't do that.
8, 9. I tell you what, I got some, you know, some of the 1725s, and I got some neighbors that's got that had the speed planters, and they're more precise than the other planter going 4 miles now.
I argued with the Monosim guys over that. They had a good thing. They slowed farmers down. They
Make
got
scratch your head.
uniform emergence, and then they started working on shock absorbers so they could run faster. I told them they had a good thing. They slowed people down. You know, if you've got a smooth seat bed, speed's not a problem. How many of you have a smooth seat bed every time?
Yeah, but you got to have that new plan to go fast.
Pay that money.
That's right. Well, that's all I have. Is that my last
Next
slide,
slide.
Richard? There you go.
That roller cone, do you ever have problems with it choking up, balling up, like heavier ground? Do you ever have much trouble with it?
This past year, we ran it almost, not exclusively, but we probably ran it more than anything else, and it was because it was wet last year, and we don't run it, we'll run a disc in front of it. I've never run it in, just say,
It has
corn
serrated
stalks.
blades on it.
Right,
Yeah,
but
good
I've
thing.
seen trouble with them blade being skewed. The bar that's for the sport, the bearings and stuff, there's mud and stuff that get caked in between that bar and that skewed blade.
Right.
And it'll ball and it'll choke it up.
Right.
I just was curious if that was just a,
I run a 16-row and a tipper roll, and all the heavy ground, we run that roller cone.
goes right
The
on.
roller cone does better than, it does better than that Bingham Brothers or the Great Plains. It'll run in wetter, heavier conditions than they will.
Huh?
You keep your divider seal.
Oh, we don't have one, I've seen, people have complained about that, and I was just curious.
Yeah.
It's probably not driving fast enough.
We run ours through standard ice, we haven't been dished or behind it.
Clean.
Yeah, we gotta take that dividing seal out and really get it balled up like that, but we can't get it on that.